Hello. Welcome to 30 and 30, a live arts retrospective of our past 29 seasons. Tonight, we will be talking about the 2015-2016 season with our special guest, Marianne Kubik. But before we get to that, my name is Chris Kelly. I am on staff here at Live Arts. I'm the special projects manager, and I have been an audience member at Live Arts since Assassins, and volunteering at Live Arts since a show called Or, which I actually worked on with tonight's special guest. So I'm sure we'll talk a little bit about that. I would like to give a shout out to our community spotlight partner for tonight, which is Twisted Branch Tea Bazaar, located on the downtown mall right near us. They are offering takeout and e-gift certificates. So if you are able to support them during this time, that would be lovely, as they have partnered with us in the past. So without further ado, let me bring you tonight's special guest, Marianne Kubik.
Hey.
Hello.
Hey, Chris, how's it going?
It's going really well. It's great to see you.
Great, good to be here.
So happy to have you.
I can't believe we're on 2015-16.
I know, the finish line is in sight. Oh my goodness, we are almost to the present.
Ooh,
yes.
30 years. What an amazing project, I have to say, really. And thanks to all of you who are putting this together.
Yeah, it's the child of Jeremy Pate. And it's we've had help from Ray Netzel, Liz Howard, Shannon Montague, all behind the scenes putting this together for everyone. And I agree, I think it's been a great success. So for people watching who may not know you, how could they not? Please tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Sure. I am, by trade, and passion, I'm a physical theater artist and an educator. I have been fascinated with what we can do with the visual and the nonverbal and with our bodies and the way that space works in live theater telling and what the audience gets to look at and gets to choose what to look at. So I've been telling stories through body language and nonverbal and staging since I can remember, actually. By day, I work at the University of Virginia, so I get to experiment with that kind of stuff a lot. I'm in the Department of Drama. I'm on faculty. I'm currently the artistic director for the academic production season. I'm also one of our resident directors there, usually working on physical theater. Yeah.
Great. And so what was the beginning of your relationship with Live Arts?
The first show that I saw, and then I think it was probably the next show that we did, I was working on. So I came to Charlottesville late in 2002 to work at UVA, and had just finished that spring, so that would have been 2003, I guess, had just finished working with my colleague Betsy Tucker, who is a Live Arts legend, on a Charles Mee production of Big Love over at UVA. And she said, you may want to check out, since you love Charles Mee so much, you may want to check out another production. And that was Summer Evening in Des Moines. So that was the first show that I saw, which may have been the last show in the old space, or one of the last.
One of them. The final production at the old space was a Latte House production, but it might have been the last stage production. But anyway, it was definitely part of the last sequence of shows. Before the
being a lover of absurd, oddball things like Charles Mee's work, I was pretty jazzed that there was a local theater company who was experimenting with that kind of stuff. And then when Betsy was directing Grapes of Wrath in the new space, she asked me to stage the fights. So was Grapes of Wrath then the first show in the new space?
In the new building. So in the new building, there's obviously the Founders and the Gibson Theater. So the very first production was a teen show of Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead up in the Founders Theater. And the first main stage production in the Gibson Theater was definitely Grapes of Wrath.
So that was my first experience with working with Live Arts, working in the new space. So I never got the chance to work in the old space. And then I counted it up. I went back and counted it up. So with that, I worked on 19 shows with Live Arts. The last one being Men on Boats, for those of you who were lucky enough to see it before we had to shut it down.
Well, we will, I mean, we are talking about every season, so spoiler alert, we will be talking about
Yay.
Men on Boats also.
And I've done collaborated with directors and shows at Live Arts in a number of ways: fight directing, staging, consulting, movement coaching, period movement work. You name it. If there's a story to work on non-verbally, I'm pretty excited to try to problem solve and figure it out.
Fantastic. Well, I know that you worked on 2 shows during the 2015-2016 season. So let's, and I actually worked on 3. So between us, I think we'll have a lot of stories to share for this particular season. So let's start looking at some pictures of that season.
That's me.
That's you, our special guest.
You don't need to look at me.
I love looking at you. There
Aww,
you are.
thank you.
And so the first show of that season in the upstage, or the Founders Theater, was Dirty Blonde, like Claudia Schiffer. And this was a 3-person show that was about 2 people who were diehard fans of Mae West, and it interwove with actual scenes from Mae West's real life. So that was basic plot, and that's Annalene and Rick Harris and Dan Sturlace in that show. And I know the costume designer was Sigrid Eilertson, and she, I know, made some beautiful gowns for the Mae West scenes. And there were, I think there was a team of maybe 4 dressers to help Anna in and out of these costumes and time periods. So that was fantastic to see, and it was a really fun show.
Christina Courtney directed that.
Yes,
is that right?
And who actually brought us together on Or.
Yes, exactly, on Or. Yeah.
Yeah, Or was the very first show that I volunteered on at Live Arts, and Christina was the director.
No
and
way.
There's the whole crew. I see my friend Barb Roberts, and there's the stage manager Betty Hales, and
Carol Pedersen, I see.
Yep. It was a very, very fun show. And City of Angels that you worked on.
Angels. I worked on City of Angels. So this was the play within a play, right? The writer writing a story, and it's all staged.
It was more like a movie within a play.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. That's what we worked on. And that's what Matt called me in as they started working on it. And he had some really amazing ideas. Oh, it's Pat Owen and Chris Esty and Michelle Matron.
Back to us.
Yay. And I'm noticing the black and white. So this is clearly from the movie within.
Yes. So the movie scenes were in black and white, and then the writer's real life was in color. Yeah.
Yep. Danielle, right? Yeah.
Yep. Danielle and Cage. Yeah.
And Cage, the tennis scene.
Yeah.
And this is part of our Angel 4, our Angel City 4. Angel City 4, City Angel 4. Our quartet of beautiful musicians. Yes, Amelia on the
and Liz Howard right there, and Dan in the
screen,
back.
right? Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. Yeah.
And the lovely Rachel Baltas.
Rachel Baltas. Yes. Still in our black and white. So yeah. So this was quite the Jeff Dreyfus, maybe as Poncho at this point. He played a few roles, didn't he?
Actually, well, multiple people played multiple roles, whether it was the movie or real life.
That's true. That's true. That's true. Except for Russ Witt and Chris Esty, because they sort of played the same character.
Correct. The writer was writing himself into the script the way he sort of wanted to be. Or wanted to
Couldn't we? Wouldn't it be great if we could all do that, Chris?
That would be very nice.
I feel a play coming on. Here's our Angel 4, our Angel City 4. So Dan Stern is there, and Christian Thiersen is there. Yeah,
and Liz
and Liz.
And there's so here you can talk about we see Mariko here on the left of the screen holding up a boom mic.
Holding up a boom. So Matt's idea was to really make it look like the film is being filmed. And so in addition to setting up whatever the shot would be, we were also the ensemble was playing the scripts and the best boys and you name it, who's on a film set, and the directors, managers. And then, so then they're bringing these sounds. And then, so if you can imagine, or you saw it, every time the staging shifted, they had to compensate for that, right? Because they're trying to get the boom, which wasn't working, right? They're trying to get that to make it look like it was. So that was a fun puzzle to work on, for sure.
Fantastic. And there's the whole group.
Yeah.
Amy Hopper, Matt Jocelyn, Kathy Mueller down there as the stage manager. Yeah, a great group and a big show. That I was really impressed by the scale of that show. It was a really big show.
Scale of not only the cast size, but seriously, it was like 2 plays in one.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. Or a movie. I know, a movie in one.
The movie within the play.
Here
we are at the Other Place by Char White.
For something completely different. Wow.
Absolutely. A very small and intimate show about a woman who has come down with early onset dementia with a tinge of irony since she is a neurologist.
I know, working on a drug for dementia to prevent it. Yeah, that's Kate Venice there playing Juliana, I think it is.
Yes.
The main character. It's a really small 4-person chamber play, really intimate, not 100% serious, but pretty serious. That's Zoe Farmingdale.
Correct.
Playing Laurel, the daughter, that we then find out no longer exists, most likely.
Yep.
So that's part of the whole story in Juliana's journey. And Martin Kyle over there on screen, right? I think that would be playing Juliana's husband, Ian, I think.
Yep, that's correct.
And Zoe was playing multiple roles, as was Scott Dunn. He's over here, and he's also playing multiple roles. And this looks like he is playing the audio. I forget what it's called, but the event coordinator of the presentation she's giving. Yeah. Oh yeah, and then the hanging light bulbs, the beautiful set it was.
Oh, and it was in the sound. What a challenge for movement.
And projections, exactly. Yeah. And I really loved, I'm assuming it was Betsy Tucker's idea. She directed.
Yes.
I really loved she put the props on people's chairs, audience members' chairs, and under chairs, because the space was so tiny and they were trying to go sparse, but of course you need some props. And so she, it was funny to watch because I got there early and people would sit down and for a second not know what to do with the prop, and then they would just hold it. And then an actor would come and take it, or just like motion them to move. And I just love when, audiences, we just know how and when to respond. Pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Oh, this is toward the end when Zoe's playing a stranger to Juliana, and
reality is crashing in.
Reality is hitting Juliana. Yeah. Oh, so sad. I remember this scene. This is the Other Place was their summer place. I remember that. And this is Martin, or Ian, I should say, the character saying, we gave it up, we sold it. And she just keeps saying the other place. Oof, even as I see it, even as I say it, I just remember it's hard. It's a hard topic. Didn't the Alzheimer's Association present it with live arts?
They did a partnership with us. I don't remember exactly what the partnership was, but they definitely were involved.
Yeah. Oh, there's Betsy.
Yep. Betsy, Lori Pinky. Some great folks involved in that show. Oh, To Kill a Mockingbird. If you don't know the story of To Kill a Mockingbird, read the book. By Harper Lee. You should. It's a great story about racism in Macomb, Alabama. And it was presented by Howard and Karen Pape. I want to point that out because I was the production stage manager on To Kill a Mockingbird, and Howard Pape was the co-set designer with Grady Smith, who was just on a couple nights ago. And Howard and Karen have been stalwart supporters of live arts. Karen was the president of the board for a time, and currently their son Jeremy is the interim artistic director. And very unfortunately and surprisingly, Howard actually passed away during this production, before the show opened, about 2 weeks before the show opened. And it was so shocking and so just unexpected and threw us for such a loop. But the story that I remember the most about that time as the stage manager, sort of freaking out about how, the set isn't finished. What are we going to do? And we've lost Howard, and everybody's so, upset and just thrown. But apparently the word went out to Howard's friends and the volunteers at the Building Goodness Foundation that we needed help, and that the set was not finished and the show needed to open. And so these people, whether they had been to Live Arts before or not, they knew Howard and they wanted to help us put this show, the finishing touches on the set, and put it all together. So people would just show up throughout the day, who just walk into the shop and say, hey, they told me that you need help finishing the set, tell me what to do. And they were, skilled carpenters that he had worked with in building Goodness and building homes in Haiti. And it was just a wonderful legacy for Howard to have those people who loved him show up and help us finish this set for this show. So anyway, we're looking at a picture of Edwina Herring and on the left, and one of my favorite people, Virginia Warner, on the left. She played the narrator. And that is the part of the finished set. And there's Landon Duvall. He shared the role of Jem with Dalton Dickerson. It was a split role for a young actor. Oh, Virginia and I worked on Gruesome Playground Injuries together, which was a show that I just adored. And
this is the original script.
Correct.
When the character kids were played by kids. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And there's Finn Faulkner, who has gone on to bigger and much and crazier, awesome things. There's Alex Citron as the villain, which, if you know Alex, is hard to believe. He's such a lovely guy, but he was definitely the villain in To Kill a Mockingbird.
Fran Smith directed, I think. Yeah.
Correct. Fran Smith directed. She and Howard basically always work together. It's sort of like there's sort of combinations at Live Arts that are solid. As many new people as we bring on, we also like to have a team that knows how to talk to each other, knows how to work together. So Fran really liked always working with Howard and Grady, sort of like how Bree really liked always working with Will Slusher. It's just some people just are always part of your team. Anyway, this was a big cast. There's Will Jones, who made his Live Arts debut in The Mountaintop, right there in the center on the witness stand. And Steve Tharp, a constant of Live Arts, playing Atticus Finch. And that is the gallery of townspeople. I see our own staff member, Leo Erico, in there.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
A shout out to Mike Long, not that he's in the photos, but he did my fellow
fight
comrade in fight choreography. He did the fight choreography. I feel like this was an apprentice show too.
It was absolutely. It was absolutely the Mentor Apprentice show for that season. So that made it all the more unwieldy. All those, as the stage manager, I could tell you, having all those teenagers around, both in the cast and behind the scenes. Woo!
And in the production meetings too?
Yes, absolutely. We involved them from the beginning to the end.
That's a lot.
Yes, there's the lovely.
Kudos to Chris Kelly.
Oh man, and God, and losing Howard in the middle of it, I was just like, what more do you want? Anyway, there's the whole cast.
It's a beautiful set.
It was a great set, and so grateful to those people who came out and helped us in Howard's honor.
So many different locations for that play.
Oh, and I should mention something rather unique about this production. If you see on the sort of right of your screen, there's a man holding an instrument. That's Greg Howard holding a Chapman stick. And he composed all original music and played it live every night during the show, as if it was a live score, almost like an old movie where they would have a live, like piano player scoring the movie. He was live on stage scoring the show. It was fantastic. Hunter-gatherer. What a lovely show. So
much that my dog loves it.
I know. I also stage manage hunter-gatherers, which for people who are unfamiliar with the live arts process, that is very, very odd. Stage managers do not usually do back-to-back shows, but Bree really wanted me to work on this show. There's Zoe again from the other place, who's also in this. Jack Walker, who I coincidentally went to high school with. Chris Patrick there with his bum exposed. And
again.
Always. And then Mendy St. Hours, who is always brilliant. Her alter ego, Tina, was on last night as the Tip Top Twins. She was fantastic. There's Jack again. That was
also a shot of a fantastic, was it lamb, I think? They were
oh yes, making. The roasted lamb. Oh God, another nightmare for a stage manager because they had to eat it.
Yeah.
So it was actually, instead of lamb meat, it was dried mango with food coloring. And it was just nasty. It was just, oh God, wow.
Yeah. To those of us who don't work behind the scenes, often the food that we eat is always something else.
Absolutely. It's never what it seems. And that's, whenever I go to like a high, production, like Broadway show, and there's food props, I always pay extra special attention to what actually gets put in the actor's mouth. Because if it's not actually in their mouth, it is fake.
There's Chris Patrick, beautiful shot in the Murphy bed, right?
Yes, the set was fantastic. Like I said, Bree and Will Slusher are just a dream team of director and set designer. And when I think of Will Slusher sets, I always think of magic. There's always an element of magic to it. And this was magical in the way that this Murphy bed, could easily be lifted up and put back into the wall. And when that happened, it became a bathroom. So there was always a toilet underneath, and then when the bed was up, it was like a bathroom with a shelf. And so it made for really fantastic sequences where characters could be talking in the bedroom, leave, and come back to the bathroom.
It was really quite magical. It was a luxury for me because I read so many scripts that I got to come to see this not knowing anything about it. So it just it totally unfolded in me in just the perfect way.
Yeah, and you being so right there, if you look in the very middle of the screen, you'll notice another stage manager's nightmare, something I had to repair every night, and yet was worth every ounce of pain for the stage manager. That door just appeared to be a normal door throughout the whole show, and then at the end, when it turns into full sort of farce, with this insane fight and just people running around that tiny space at full speed and taking full swings at each other. One character is chasing the other. She goes through the door like normal, closes it behind her and locks it behind her. And then the character that's chasing her, that's played by Mendy, just pow, bashes right through that door. And every night that sound was just an explosion, and it just made me so happy. Even though I knew I was the one who had to take off the paper and re-roll it out and re-staple it, it was worth every second of my time for that magic moment of just pow through. And there I am, right there.
Yay, there you are. And that work was done by Larry Friedland. I don't know Larry, but I loved all the physical movement, the crazy stuff, and the fights.
Larry is incredible. He works a lot over in Stanton, whether it's Shen Arts or American Shakespeare. He does a lot of fights for them and he's a weapons expert. He has lent us many a sword, many a dulled knife, and he is a joy to work with, and does beautiful fights.
That was clearly a shot taken at the end of the show, judging by the distress or lack of dress.
Yes, definitely at the end of the show.
Yeah, Carol Pedersen again helping out.
And my friend Barb Roberts, who was my ASM on Or, and was my ASM again on this. And
that is the show that you and I met on OR.
Yes, exactly.
Season.
First, so many firsts. But anyway, the next show was Dreamgirls, a huge musical. For people who didn't see it or don't know, or didn't see the movie, it was loosely based on the Supremes. Is about a girl group in the 60s and one became more of a rising star than the others, and the sort of jealousy and behind the scenes stuff that went on with that.
Fun fact, I saw Dreamgirls once and only before this when I was a teenager, and I saw it on Broadway. And then it was like, oh my gosh, you're doing Dreamgirls. Like that's going to bring back the memories. And so this is the second and only other performance I've seen.
Amazing. And the costumes were beautiful. And what a challenge to have the three of the same costume for three different actresses. You know, as you can see, there's multiple groups of repeated dresses. And there's, everybody's favorite, Daryl, of course.
There's Daryl, yes. And Carrie Moran did these costumes. I believe, along with Miriam Halpern, I think.
Mimi Halpern,
Mimi.
yeah. Mm-hmm. Who was fantastic and was directed by Julie Hamburg. And the associate director, I would say more of a co-director and choreographer, was Ike Anderson. And a behind-the-scenes story about this show was the team was a little bit concerned about finding voices big enough for Dreamgirls. Dreamgirls requires a big range and big voices. So Ike Anderson took it upon himself to actually go around Charlottesville to different venues and bars where they were having karaoke nights. And he would sit and watch and see all the people perform. And if there was someone with a big voice, he would go right over to them and say, hey, you know, Live Arts is doing Dreamgirls. You would be great, please audition. And that's how we were able to cast this huge show with so many huge voices. And yeah, it was great, so much energy.
Yeah.
From that.
It's a period piece. I mean, you know, it's considered a period piece, even though it's 20th century. That puts us in a period. Mm-hmm. Yep. Nicely done.
Darkita Brown and Valencia Harvey and Deandra McDonald now. She was Deandra Irving in this show, and Kim Riley. Yeah. And there over on the left is Winston. He was also in Death of a Salesman, and unfortunately, he also has passed away since Death of a Salesman. So it's great to see him so fun in that show. Nice work if you can get it. Another show I stage managed. Here's a pro tip. If you are looking to get into stage management, do not agree to do 3 shows in one season. Just a pro tip.
You did this one too.
Yes, I sure did.
Kudos to Chris Kelly.
So anyway, so this picture is of the lovely Daniel Neal, who went on to Carnegie Mellon. He graduated just this May, I think. And anyway, if you look a little bit closely at this particular picture, you might notice that Daniel Neal looks a little warm. Looks like he might be sweating a little bit, you know, and it's a song and dance show. Maybe, you know, maybe he was just working really hard. In actuality, the air conditioning was out for I believe, every night of the show except opening night and the first Saturday. After that, no more AC. So under stage lights and under, you know, it was a period costumes. It was a period piece from the late 20s or mid 1920s. And so he had multiple layers. He was always wearing like 3-piece suits, as you can see here. So he was just drenched. He was just sweating, and he had to dance every number. Oh my goodness. And and also, I also want to mention that this, in previous years, the summer show would be a mix of adults and teens. For example, if you saw Xanadu the other day on the slideshow, you would see adults playing adult roles and teens playing the teen roles. And like, you know, Legally Blonde, the same thing, you know, that there would be the adult roles, but most of the cast was teens. Mike Long was education director, and he also directed Nice Work If You Can Get It. And part of his vision was to make it all teens. and only teens. So even if the role was an adult role, we were going to switch to a teen playing that older role. And that held true for the next, until now. I mean, you know, it's still true. It's still true to this day, but this was the first time. Obviously, the very first teen show, I believe, was 13, and that only had teens in it, but that was sort of by default because all the characters were teens. After that, adults joined the mix until
is that Cotton there, or
yes,
Real
yeah,
Bubbles?
that is Cotton, and the lovely Rachel Baltus delivered that number so beautifully and so hilariously.
See, she's acting with her toes.
The whole body, Marianne.
Whole body. Amazing how we can gesture.
Yes, yes. And there's the lovely teen ensemble supporting through in Rachel's number, that same number, sort of a dream sequence of sorts. And there's Mike Long.
There's Mike Long.
And funny story, in the background, you'll see next to Lainey in the black and white number, that man with the jacket on back there, long coat on, is Mason Robertson. And he actually injured himself one day, busted his knee, as I recall, and Mike Long stepped into the role. So Mike Long, one night and one night only, stepped into a role in Nice Work If You Could Get It as the director, and as that role, of Mason's role. And the costumes fit him just fine. They were basically the same height, basically the same build. So there was no costume issue. And it was just so much fun. You know, as a stage manager who sees the show 300 times from rehearsal to closing night, to just have that new energy and that new, oh my God, what's he gonna do? Is he gonna remember? You know?
I can't say we exactly taught that. He got his MFA in acting at UVA. I can't say we exactly taught that, but Mike's really resourceful.
Yes, he was fantastic. And there's Ryan Shee, a wonderful actress there with Daniel. And there's the whole company.
That is a big company too.
Yeah.
That's a lot of heat emanating.
Absolutely. So the final story that I know I've told so many stories about the show, but I'm telling you, so many crazy things happened during this particular show. The final thing that I want to talk about is during this show, while the AC was already out, lightning struck the building during the show. And it actually had a surge all through the building into the theater and shorted everything out. All the lights went out and the light board was completely fried. So the actors were in the middle of a dance number. They were finishing a dance number. In pitch black, they finished it. Which, you know, normally when you're an actor, you hold right when you can't see and it's not safe, but they were determined teens and they finished that number. We ended up having to finish the show under work lights, which for people who don't know, theatrical lighting is beautiful. It is meant to enhance actors and, you know, make them just glow and give atmosphere and, you know, and so work lights are not that. They are extremely harsh, extremely bright, and just really there for safety reasons. So anyway, it was another sort of stage manager nightmare of everything sort of going wrong, but the audience still loved it. The kids were great. They finished the show, and it was a great night and a great show.
A positive note: work lights most likely give off less heat.
Yes.
Than stage lights. So I don't know. Fate was there.
Yes. But anyway, so that is the end of that season, which was so much fun. And I'm so glad that we both got to work on it on different shows in that season. But let's talk a little bit more about you and what you do. So tell me about, I'm curious about your process with working with actors and directors to tell the story through the body. Like how does that work? How is that artistic vision achieved and the storytelling achieved?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's achieved in different ways. It also depends on what the needs of a show are. But in general, stories have beginning, middles, and ends, and they have characters who are on journeys. So it's a matter of figuring out really who that character is, what their journeys are. And then if we break it down, every action also has a beginning, middle, and end. And it's about finding those and figuring out what every little step of the character's journey is. And then what is different about that character, or maybe even similar in some respects to what the actor's energy or posture or way of moving, way of gesturing. I mean, we could look at like small details, which are actually pretty large, about are your feet, do you turn out? Do you turn in? Does the character's feet turn out or turn in? Because everything in our body language tells a part of a story, right? Where we people really do look to nonverbal and what is not spoken to figure things out. And then when you add the spoken word, it makes it that much more valuable a moment.
Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes your role is pretty easily defined because it's straight up, fight choreography.
It is. That is like probably the most obvious and often the sexiest job that a movement specialist, a physical theater artist gets to come and work on. And I've worked on a number of fights for with live arts. Starting with Grapes of Wrath, doing it's just a small little fight, right? And so we can go from a couple of punches, and then of course we talked about that in the other shows as well too, with Mike and Larry doing the work there. City of Angels had a staged in the movie part. It was a longer fight with more actors involved, mostly unarmed, and found objects. And then you can get to something really, really complicated, like a sword fight, right? And probably the biggest one I worked on at Live Arts was in the 2000, it was either 2009 or 10. So it was in that season. I don't remember exactly when Les Liaisons Dangereux fell in the season. I know you talked about that a while ago. Yep. But there's fights need, any piece of movement, as I said, is part of telling the story. So fights, no matter what they are, a small little punch or a large small sword duel at the very end of the play, they tell part of the story. And so this is Valmont's suicide, essentially. He's like set this up with a semi-inexperienced sword fighter in Dansonnet at the very end. And so not only did neither Chris Esty or oh gosh, I'm blanking, Christensen. Oh my gosh, I don't know why I'm blanking on his name.
I'll look it up.
Oh, it'll come to me. It'll come to me. So neither of them were sword fighters. And so it was partly training, but training for just what they needed to do with the small sword. And small sword is, the épée weapon, the very fancy dueling weapon, close to what fencing is. And so not only did they need to learn safety and how to make these moves believable, but they actually had to tell a story through it. Yeah. Les Liaisons Dangereux is probably a script that is a model for all of the different kinds of movement that could, and nonverbal and skills-based work that could happen in a production.
It was Tom Christensen.
Now that I think about it. Sorry?
Tom Christensen.
Tom, it was Tom. I don't know why. That totally makes sense to me now, because now I remember Tom. I was thinking S and there's no S in his name. Oh, Thomas, there'd be an S there. Tom Christensen, yeah. He was a UVA undergrad, and of course, many, if not most of us, know Chris Esty.
Yes.
And he was Valmont.
Yes. That was also a period piece. So you had
also a period piece,
which is another function of movement choreography consultants, or
It is, yeah, because a story is, whether it's written in that period or it's not, and then like this was not, it's written, it's set in a particular period for a reason, right? And so it's about evoking the period, not reenacting it, because we can't do that, especially before photography and video, right? But it's about evoking it because that's where the story needs to be told.
Right.
And it's alignment, posture, it's in gesture, it's in bows and curtsies and mannerisms, it's the way that you sit and the way that you stand.
Which I remember very clearly
You
from
do, from
yeah,
or.
where we were all taught the Marianne Kubik method of rising up and forward, so that engaging your core.
Engage the core, forward and up, yes. And I can't take full credit because that comes from Alexander technique. But yeah, that's
Well,
what can help you. Because we
So
don't do that anymore. We like push and
yeah, exactly. We're
yeah.
like all, you know, pushing down with our arms and everything, but no, the
Yeah.
Marianne way is very, very controlled.
Oh yeah. I mean, what is this, 1790s, I think.
Yeah,
So, oh, you did not do that in public. And public was anytime one other person was in the room, you were in public.
yes.
So that was, yeah. So,
and you also,
and Chris Baumer directed, and he was really, all of this was really important to him. So I spent a lot of time working with the cast in various capacities.
Fantastic. And you also talked about, in this particular season that we just looked at, the 2015-16, being sort of a staging consultant.
Yeah. That was City of Angels. I came in. And so that has to do with, oh, I love creating visual pictures. I do it as a director as well, too. And I love coming in and problem solving. I say that in like a fun experimental way, not like there's a problem. But Matt Johnson asked me to come in because of this movie within a story. There are so many things that have to happen quickly, a la, you know, like Shakespeare and in and out, but there are also a lot of moving parts, like literal moving parts, not only actors and set pieces, but the booms that you saw and it's a large cast. And so we did some experimenting. We tried. Sometimes we failed. Sometimes we succeeded. We tried again, and we really tried to create a seamless move from one to the next, from one scene to the next, and from one era, which was the movie, and another, which was the present.
And I know that Betsy also asked you to help her out on the other plays.
Betsy, yes. And so that's where the movement coach comes in, right? There's so many titles. I look at my resume, I go,
movement specialist.
I gotta find a way to condense these titles because they all come down to the same thing, right? How do you tell the story? So there was as part of the other plays, right? A woman going through experiencing early onset, probably dementia, not Alzheimer's, but probably dementia. There are scenes that we think are real, but then we find out that they're not. And so Betsy came to me and said, how can we look at this? And so that when the audience realizes this later, they can go back to it because of some visuals and some energy that was in there and go, oh, of course, how did I not see that puzzle piece? Right. And so we thought about it. I thought about it. I went back and, usually I'm sort of making up exercises. So this was a made up exercise that then I've used in my classes since to try to play with it. And so, like I said, every action has a beginning, middle, and end. So suppose every single action that took place, and they were 2, maybe 3 phone conversations. I think there were just 2. The person who actually didn't exist anymore actually dictated the movement in that conversation. And then Juliana, who was the woman experiencing dementia, actually followed that because she was following a memory or an imagination. And so, if I were to gesture here and then I were to gesture here, that actually has a beginning, middle, and end that I could find. And then I could work with another actor. And when I start, you start. And when I end, you end. And it takes really, really fine-tuned listening skills. But one of my favorite things is when actors find that deep listening. And ultimately, because this was in the rounds, and then there was a lot of back and forth conversation with the gestures. It was so much music that it became a really solid foundation for the actors, but it was just too complex to actually put into the production. So it was there if you knew how to look like myself. It was there supporting it, but it wasn't really, really there.
Fantastic. And I know that something else that you do just with general movement and also helping actors be more comfortable with intimacy with
I'm often, that's one of those things that fits in with, while you're here, can you also work with our actors on? I love those. The unexpected. Now it's really formalized, and I'm so pleased that there are at least 2 professional organizations in this country that deal with intimacy coordination or intimacy direction for film, for television, and for theater. So I'm not formally trained in that, but I work with actors a lot in being, I mean, it's the basis of fight choreography too. And so intimacy direction falls into any other choreography, oftentimes fight choreography, but not, it's just any choreography. It has to be choreographed, right?
Sure.
You have to go ahead of time. You have to talk about, just like you would say, and then you're going to throw a jab and you're going to receive it. And then there's going to be a kick. You have to talk about, okay, now we're going to have a kiss. And now she will place her hand on his shoulder, and you have to map out that whole thing.
Yeah.
And then before that, you actually have to get the actors comfortable with each other, playing games that require some physical contact, but they're always as numerous made up games or ones that I find and discover that have to do with like we're back in the playground again, just, you know, out and about playing tag or something.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
So thank you so much. We're getting ready to wrap up. Is there any final story, a favorite moment at Live Arts that you just, you know, you're just like, oh man, when I think of that, I'm just like, that was great. You know, maybe from another show, from another season that we haven't talked about.
Yeah, it's, you know, it's when a moment like works and it really, really works. And you go, even I go, I didn't know if it was going to. So going back to another Matt Jocelyn collaboration, when he was directing Les Miserables, I was doing all sorts of movement, staging, helping with staging, period movement, fight, etc. And Javert's Suicide, Chris Esty was playing Javert. I apologize. It was such a large cast, and I apologize to the ensemble who assisted with this. So you know, he falls from height, and the play from the beginning, this production was purposefully bare bones as we could get it, and the story was going to come through the music, and the story was going to come through the actors and the visual, right, and the movement. And so for a moment, I didn't express this to anyone, but I thought, well, maybe we could put him up on a wire. And I thought, that goes totally against keeping this bare bones. And I said, okay, bear with me on this. I have an idea. And so Chris, I asked Chris to stand up a little bit higher on the stage, right? And so there was a little lower that she could step down. And then 4, I think it was, ensemble members were as far down below. And we had lights just here on Chris, and he was singing the end of Javert's Suicide. And then I said, and now I want you to fall as slowly forward as you possibly can. And then when you're losing your balance, the ensemble members will like place their hands on you and slowly lower you. And Chris, gotta love him, and he said, that's not gonna work. And I said, you gotta trust me. But of course, I didn't know if it was gonna work either. We never know until we do it like at least 3 times full out. And so we tried it, and it was beautiful. And then when we got the lights in, and they were just, and Chris was emoting as he was singing. I mean, that's really what I was looking for, is we've all like had that fall feeling. And so that's all we wanted to see was, and then we don't see anything else. And it was soft, quiet, and just gorgeously beautiful. So I still remember that.
That's amazing. Well, thank you for sharing that. And thank you for being here tonight.
Sure.
And 30 and 30, of course, continues tomorrow with the 2016-2017 season. And our special guest tomorrow night will be Kelly Strohmeyer. So I hope that everybody watching will tune in. And thank you all for watching. And we will see you again tomorrow. Thank you, Marianne. So great to talk to you.
Sure thing. Good to see you, Chris.